Warm welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Western Clash, day number 3, as we get down to business. We are going to crown ourselves a Western Clash champion today to find out who is going to be able to take that title and if Europe can trump North America here once again, as only one remaining representative is available. Of course, to my left-hand side, we have Kaldor, we have Skimmy, and we have Glaurung to start the day off here. And what we saw yesterday was, a lot of back-and-forth games. I think one thing that really stood out for me from day number 2, Kaldor, is that North America actually did themselves proud in a lot of those series.
Yeah, especially when we talk about Team Freedom against Team Liquid, there was a great performance that we saw. What impressed me was that Freedom is the team that had the least experience on an international stage coming into this event, and they performed really well against Liquid, especially against Vikings play, which is really something to note because in North America, Vikings are not really played a lot. So adapting to the play style that Europe is quite familiar with, that was really impressive. And they outplayed Liquid on several maps, so that was really cool to see.
Good to see, Skimmy.
I mean, it's promising. They went in as the wild card with no lane experience. That's been the big narrative for them, right? So a lot of question marks were there. I think they just proved their critics wrong. They can keep their heads held high and go back to North America, knowing that they have a lot of potential to rise on.
Thank you very much, Tim Fraser. And then, of course, we do have Glaurung to my left here. Yeah, and say, you're watching the North Americans from a North American eye. How did you think they fared yesterday?
Yeah, I'd say from my perspective as one of their peers, I'd say overall, Team Freedom definitely made me proud. I mean, the set versus Liquid came down to the smallest of margins overall. And at the same time, GFE being able to take a map off of Team Expert, it was Braxis, and they do have a really strong playstyle on that map, but still, it was pretty impressive, I'd say.
Well, GFE still alive in the tournament at the moment, obviously. They're going to be going up against 3 big European powerhouses, maybe even just one if they're not able to get through that lower bracket. How do you think that's going to break down, Kaldor? Just kind of thoughts.
I think the way the bracket works out is kind of funny because Liquid has now the chance to go for the triple, send all 3 of the North American teams down. So they already took down Tempo Storm in the winner bracket. Then they were successful against Freedom, even though that series was way closer. And now against Gale Force, I think they will come into this well prepared. Hazop was mentioning earlier that today anything's possible. They could place 4th, they could even take the entire thing. They feel still really comfortable. So I think Team Liquid is going into this really well prepared, and Gale Force is going to have a very tough match ahead of them.
I mean, I think on the flip side of that, it is the gauntlet run. You've taken out every single NA team so far. Gale Force Esports being the final member of that, and a lot of people said they are the team to beat, really, when it comes to the North American region. Tempo Storm, people have sort of come to grow used to the, not the disappointment, but sort of the lack of results when it's come to the international stage. Freedom with a wild card. It's progressively got harder as the series has gone on 2-0 into a 3-2. Gale Force Esports a lot to play for.
And at the last Western Clash, honestly, there's a similar storyline to what GFE could potentially face, being Dignitas. They went through the lower bracket and ended up winning the entire event. I don't know if we'll see that same thing from Gale Force, but there is the potential for a similar storyline.
A lot of the questions on people's minds when we watched yesterday's games were, especially when we looked at Team Freedom going up against Team Liquid, was it Team Liquid looking shaky, or was it Team Freedom looking strong to the point where they can contend almost with the European teams?
To me, definitely it was Team Freedom looking strong.
Okay.
Of course, when you look at Warhead, Liquid, sorry, not Warhead, but the earlier cursed Hollow match with the Vikings, Liquid arguably just threw the match. They were winning the game, and then on the core, they basically just overextended. They made the wrong call, got wiped on the core, and the game turned against them. That's a match that they, from how the gameplay developed, had in their bag and should have won. But overall, if you look at the rest of the games that was played out, Freedom just made great decisions. They were very aggressive in the way they controlled the map and the fights. And it was not that Liquid in these situations was in any means shaky and made big mistakes that just allowed Freedom to walk away with the victory. It was Freedom really forcing the mistakes and playing just extremely well. So that impressed me.
I mean, it seemed to me that from the drafting element alone, they'd actually done their homework, Team Freedom. They, for that one game, made the slip up by not actually banning out the Oriole. They got punished big time as a result of that, and they lost the game. But apart from that, the TLV, we said, is this a big factor for Hazu? Obviously feels the necessity to play it, to actually try and get a win for Team Liquid. And Team Freedom seemed to have that down under pat.
That's something I would dispute. Because for what I said earlier, I think, for me, it was a throw. And that was the same thing that Liquid said. I feel they struggled against the Vikings, and if Liquid would have not been too overconfident, they should have won it. So for me personally, that was not really the Vikings being the deciding factor in the series. I still believe that for Team Freedom, if they go up against it, they will probably have to adjust a bit more. In the end, they won it, but that you can make the argument for both sides in that particular game.
I mean, the only reason I bring it up as a point is in the second phase of another draft, they actually TLV could have been banned out. They decide we don't even care.
Okay.
Yeah.
Team Freedom, you got to give them credit, recognizing their win conditions definitely in that game. Like, what was impressive against the Lost Vikings strategy that Team Liquid is so fond of and so proficient with is like the fact that they shut down the first boss and were able to take that away and eliminate an earlier win condition from Liquid kind of shows like a lot of growth from that team. And I don't know if I'd necessarily agree that it's 100% a threat. I think Freedom was really aware of the win conditions and ended up like, they did overextend at core for sure, but they ended up stopping Liquid's strategy, and I think that in and of itself is very impressive.
Okay.
All right, let's take a look at the bracket and see exactly how things have shaped up so far here at the Western Clash, as we did have a lot of best of threes at the beginning of the tournament, but everything aside from that left column has been at best of fives, with a best of 7 grand finals, with a 1-map advantage to the winner from the upper bracket. Today's matches, as you can see there, we have Gale Force and Team Liquid coming up a little bit later on, but Fnatic versus Team Expert is really the big EU versus EU showdown, Skimmy, that a lot of people are looking forward to.
Yeah, I mean, apart from the series between NA and EU that everyone always loves to jump onto, I mean, personally for me, I feel like this is the grand final that we're about to witness, get a glimpse into what these teams have prepared.
Okay.
The one thing I really want to have as the question mark for Expert is what kind of style do they bring to this one? Do they try and play all their cards right away and just show Fnatic what's up? Or do they decide to go through the lower bracket, have another chance? Depends the preparation they have into this in terms of those trump cards available for them.
This is actually interesting because Expert talked a bit about how they feel there's not really a lot to hide here, since they're most they practice the most against Fnatic and against Team Liquid.
Yeah.
So these teams know each other extremely well, since already in the normal regular season they are practicing a lot against each other.
Yeah.
So Expert might be able to maybe pull 1 or 2 surprises off, but they don't have a lot of hidden strategies where they are saying we are not willing to show that yet. That's at least what they mentioned earlier.
I mean, someone like yourself, Caldo, you're very entrenched in the European scene. Glowering, you kind of have eyes from outside the European scene. How do you see Team Expert trying to overcome the titan that is Fnatic? Because it is a difficult task.
Absolutely. Fnatic has shown through this event and the previous event, Mid-Season Brawl, that they're the best team in the world, and from my perspective. But Team Expert, at the same hand, does look very good themselves, and I'd like for them to approach this series, Game 1, in a sort of experimental fashion by playing it standard. We saw Team Liquid approach this set from, you know, they took Vikings every map, and they sort of like accepted the fact that Fnatic was a better team, and they only thought the only chance they'd win is with an unusual strategy. But I'd like to see Expert challenge them with a straight-up game and just see how they fare before resorting to those tactics.
I mean, it's best of 5, so you have a small little bit of room to feel out for your opponents, but maps are very different from map to map to map, but you know what you're going to get from Fnatic. Chances are it's going to be that macro style, and then but the big problem is that it's not only the macro style that thrives for them, it's also their teamfight coordination is almost unparalleled at the moment, Kaldor.
Especially when it comes to global. The way they're using them and the way they can pounce on a target within half a second is absolutely crazy. Yeah. That has been their biggest strength for a long time, and they perfected that even more. So they're also one of I think one of the few teams that was able to play with the Brightwing as a solo heal, just because they played a completely different game outside of using Brightwing just for massive team fights and heal potential, but more so the utility on the map. So Fnatic beating them, you have to somehow shake them up, because if you don't break their coordination, you're going to lose the game.
Well, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that first match in just a few moments' time, as we are almost ready to start day number 3 here for the Western Clash. It's time to find out in the next couple of hours who is going to be our Western Clash champion. Time to crown a Western Clash champion here in day number 3, and 4 teams remain. We've started with 8, of course, and 4 of those had to go. And now we remain 3 European teams, 1 American team. Gale Force Esports fights against the entirety of Europe. It is going to be a tall task for them, but of course, with the likes of Fnatic, Expert, and Team Liquid, extremely formidable opponents. Well, let's talk about our first game today, guys. It is going to be Fnatic going up against Expert in the upper side of this bracket. These 2 teams, Team Fnatic, they are currently the reigning world champions. Is anybody going to be able to stop them, Kaldor?
Only if you break the rhythm. As I said before, the coordination that they show is fantastic. One of the I think the most concrete thing that I can point out is that during the regular season, we had a few games in which teams early on before level 10 were able to play right on the same level. It was pretty solid and even, and all of a sudden heroic abilities come online and Fnatic just flips a switch, and then they immediately just in a fight within half a second take the first target out, make it a 5 versus 4, and that's how every single one of these series went, with the exception of the match that they had against the Playing Ducks. So I think what you have to do is break their rhythm somehow and then try to put them into that mindset where they start to question and doubt themselves again.
Right. I mean, I think from my perspective, the biggest thing is what kind of style do they try to deny. We talked about the macro gameplay sense. We talked about the micro sense as well. When I'm looking at Fnatic, I'm thinking the likes of Quacknix on Falstead, Wooby on Dahaka. Both of those series find a lot of success for them. Always high priority as a result as well.
It feels like they haven't really had to show too much either in this tournament. It feels like they haven't even been tested yet, Glaurung.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's largely attributed to the teams that they've played up until this point.
Okay.
Red Canids and Team Liquid both sort of approached the match versus Fnatic from an unorthodox standpoint. And in the draft, I think that I don't know, Fnatic hasn't really been tested in the draft to the point where they want to bring out some of these more uncharacteristic things. Like, Fnatic's drafts, for me, have been very reminiscent of what they played at the mid-season brawl.
Right.
And I'd really like to see Expert pressure them to the point where we see new things. But at the same time, like, the biggest thing that I'm going to be watching from Fnatic is Schwimpy plays so well off of Breeze's engagements.
The one thing with Fnatic is simply that I don't even think they have to show too much new stuff, because they always said, we are really confident that our meta or the way that we play is the strongest no matter what you do. Best example is when we had the double support meta really rising in Europe, for example, and every team played double support, and everybody said you have to play double support to be successful. Fnatic was the only team that said, well, we can play it, but you know what, we are way stronger than that with our normal setup, because we can pull that off. So they stuck with it and showed everyone that they are on a different level.
I think that's one of the scary things about Fnatic, right? The fact that they have a multitude of styles that you never know when going into draft what you're going to get, Glaurung.
Yeah, absolutely. Fnatic's just such a treat to watch at any point. Like, looking at all 5 of their players, to be completely honest with you, are star players. At one point, you're watching SMX, and he's just making insane plays. And then on the other side of the map, you see Wubby just baiting the enemy team to overextend. And it's just always so good to watch.
Speaking of star players, who really stands out for you, Skimmy, on this team?
I said it before, I've said it all tournament long. Personally, for me, it's Breeze. Just the amount of opportunity he creates for the team. He just makes tanks look like they can actually do hard work and carry.
Right.
You feel, especially in the likes of ETC, you're like, well, I'm power sliding him, I'm overextended. That overextension, which other teams would then look to try and capitalize on, works them. We saw yesterday with the Diablo, he goes in deep, Shrimpy right there on the back end, ready to execute that backline. He gets away on a lot of the time, little to no health, but he knows those limits, and they abuse it.
Let's turn our attention to the opposite team for this best of 5, of course. It is Team Expert. Expert, who have come in and throughout HGC, you know, they've risen, they've found their place, they've gained steam, gained momentum. I think with Athero, that's only propelled them to higher heights here. Kaldor, what can you tell me about Team Expert?
Well, Expert always reminds me a lot of Team Liquid, because when they formed, they were basically a bunch of misfits where everyone said these guys cannot win unless they cheese and surprise you. And then they started to just grow as a unit. They arguably put the most practice time in. This is something that every single European team recognized about them, the sheer amount of effort that goes into their practice. And as we said, with Athero coming in, they just got so much stronger, since their solo laner is definitely one of the best that we have in Europe and arguably in the world. So they have a fantastic set of players here, and it's just that they've grown over time. They've been around for a long time. Athero is a new addition, but the core of the team has stayed the same.
I mean, what really stands out to me for this guy, or for these bunch of players, is we've seen Medivh being chosen a fair few times during this tournament. Right now, he's been banned away 4 times. He's won 5 of those games. he hasn't lost a single game, and it's been a big denote, especially to Tracer compositions, which we know both teams are quite confident in terms of playing. So I think in terms of the meta, we discussed briefly about double tanks, double support. The highest win rate we've had at this event so far has been the double tank, one support, and the specialist actually flexing into that role to take what usually would be an assassin.
I mean, who better to talk to about Medivh than yourself, Glaurung? ADRD, what do you make of him when you actually watch him playing Medivh?
He's a fantastic player. I'd say he's arguably the strongest Medivh in Europe, but Schwimpy, at the same time, does contest him for that title. And I think Schwimpy's been floating under the radar when it comes to Medivh play within Europe for such a long time that, you know, ADRD's always had the Medivh spotlight, but I'm kind of like shifting it a little bit over now. Like, I've seen Schwimpy play it and played Versus numerous times. He has a very unique play style when it comes to the Medivh, but I don't know, both of these teams have very good success when it comes to that hero, and I'd love to see it throughout this set.
Is that something that Fnatic would want to control, or can they look down other avenues against Expert in, say, for example, bans to just kind of rein in Team Expert?
I wouldn't be surprised to see some Medivh bans on there, and because you can deny one of the strongest tools that Expert has. But at the same time, also I have to note that in the games that we've seen this weekend, Expert struggle a bit with their coordination, which is not really typical for them. But we have seen a lot of the Medivh combos with the ley lines here kind of failing on the timing, so that's something they have to fix for today.
All right, well, I'm getting word that we are ready to greet our first team here to the stage for day number 3. And it's a big day for these guys because they need to claim themselves and stamp themselves here on the Western Clash to move into the grand final. Let's first welcome Team Fnatic as they are the world champions.
Quacknix, Breeze, Schwimpy, SMX, Wubby. Welcome to the Nexus, Fnatic.
Rumored to be having a sponsor come over by L'Oreal in just a few months' time. Who knows what might happen for their fantastic mains as Quacknix leads them out here for their series in the upper bracket. And guys, overall, they're a formidable force. They're the world champions. It's very, very difficult to go toe-to-toe with them, Glaurung.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that I want to be aware of, I don't necessarily think it will happen, but Fnatic in the past has struggled in high-pressure situations, specifically against Dignitas when they started to get to this phase of the tournament, and I'd really like to see how they respond.
All right, and of course, welcoming their opponents to the stage, another European staple by now. It is, of course, Team Expert.
Bad Benny, Athero Angel, ADRD, Cursin, Nick. Welcome to the Nexus, Team Expert.
From wild childs to constant grinders and contenders here, Team Expert has really staked their claim on the European scene. Making it to the Western Clash over Team Dignitas was not enough. No, they are looking to go all the way here to the finals and try and make the upset Kaldor against Team Fnatic.
And they have the tools to do it. They are the underdog in the series for sure, but they've shown in the past that they can take games of the best European teams. They have now successfully pushed into the top 3. That was a goal for them for a long time, and they could definitely push Fnatic to the fence.
Yeah, I mean, we had what I consider to be a very competitive series yesterday in Team Liquid going up against Team Freedom. But for me, Glaurung, it feels like this game is going to be potentially the most competitive or highest level series we're going to see in the tournament so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think this will be the highest level. And this is, for me personally, the most anticipated match of this tournament. I've wanted to see what Expert can do against these top dogs in Fnatic.
It's a case of a lot of scouting as well, Skimmy, because there's the potential, or at least I think both of these teams feel, it's very likely you see each other in the grand final, so this means a lot. Which
is what I mentioned at the very start of the broadcast, and even on day one when we were discussing it with Expert themselves, they felt quite confident. They said as long as nothing too wacky comes out, no cheese, anything that we're too unprepared for, we believe that we should be in the grand finals against a European team.
Yep.
Arguably Fnatic are the team to beat.
All right, we're waiting as the vetoes come in, waiting for our first map as well. So if we can get that rolling on so we can find out what our first map is going to be between these two teams, that would be fantastic. Veto onto Cursed Hollow. And finally, what is our pick?
I find it interesting that Fnatic opts in to ban the Dragonshire. I I don't know if that's a trend I've seen from them in the past, but I feel like that's a map where their global rotational play excels, so it's interesting for me to see that ban.
They banned it actually a lot. They had a couple of like phases where they went through different maps that they simply didn't want to play. They had Battlefield for a long time completely eliminated for their pool, and then in scrims they all of a sudden realized, wait a second guys, we are winning here basically every single match.
Yeah.
So they put it back in, and Dragonshire was very much the opposite for quite a period, so they moved it out of the pool.
As much as Infernal Shrines is one of Fnatic's stomping grounds, though, this is actually one of the maps where Team Expert first impressed me way back when you know, Medivh was a very high focal point for them, and they were just executing over walls, being very aggressive with that kind of play in Europe.
I thought you would mention the Cho'Gath now.
Oh, no, not that one, no.
I mean, to add to that point, I was just going to say, in terms of phase number 2, looking at Expert's stats for it, only played it 2 times, didn't win a single game on it. And if you compare that to Fnatic, 6 times they went on that map, they went 67% with a win rate. So, I mean, this is a map that Fnatic feel very comfortable on, a good way for them to open up the best-of-5 series, get that confidence, try and trigger some, I suppose, emotional knee-jerk reaction out of Expert to see how those cards can really trump.
Absolutely, and this map in particular, one thing I've been looking out for all tournament, and we haven't really seen too much of, but I've been talking to Kirsten, and he actually does favor Stukov pretty highly.
Yep.
I'm really curious to see if we'll see it on this map here on Infernal Shrines. I definitely think it's one of his best maps, and I think both SMX and Kirsten are very proficient at the hero. They both speak highly of him in the proper situations, and I'd be excited to see him here.
All right, time to get into it. Draft number 1 here for our first best of 5 of the day, as Fnatic goes up against Team Expert. The winner of this series goes on to the grand final with a 1-map advantage.
I want to echo Glaurung's point here real quickly. This is definitely the best map for Stukov so far, and it's something that basically all of the support players agree on. With the lurking arm build, you get so much value here. The interesting part about Fnatic when they talk about Stukov is that even though they think he's strong, they don't quite know yet how strong he actually is, because they face a pretty interesting problem. When they play with Stukov, they win their scrims. When they play against Stukov, they also win them.
Yeah.
So it's a first world problem to have right there. But I would expect him to make an appearance in this draft, either as a pick or a ban later on.
I mean, this is what I was discussing before in terms of where do Expert decide to try and take this draft. Do they highly prioritize the macro game or the micro game? You discussed before the coordination with the Medivh, the Diablo, the coordination of those ultimates, but they decide to deny out the Wobby factor in this instance, try and put him into a different hero. Like I mentioned as well, Cracknex is very proficient on Fausto, which also this tournament has got a 6-win to 0-loss ratio, so a power pick if they decide to go down that route.
I like that Fnatic is opting in to hover the Medivh ban, and they end up locking it in. This is something that Fnatic, even as the defending world champion, they're always willing to show the respect to the enemy team that they deserve. We saw it against Team Liquid with numerous Vikings bans and just, well, awareness of what Team Liquid's strengths are. And I think we see it here again. They're showing a lot of respect to Expert by taking away the Medivh.
Yeah. They're doing their research, and with those teams really being extremely familiar with each other, not only due to the regular league play, but also due to the scrims they have on a regular basis. This is really something where Fnatic, and I want to say all of the European teams on the higher level do, that they always ban target picks over meta picks if it warrants the issue, and that is obviously the case. I mean, ADRD, as you said, Glaurung, is the Medivh in Europe, maybe next to Shrimpy.
I mean, it feels like to me as if Expert want to try and take away the macro game, Fnatic go, well, we're not going to allow you to play that micro game. If we're going to come at you with an aggressive team comp, you can't patch that by having the force of will from the Medivh to deny a lot of that potential.
I'm curious to see where Fnatic prioritizes Oriel in this draft. We mentioned Stukov. Both of them are hyper-sustain, and they fill that role. But Expert has approached this draft up until this point in a very smart way. I feel like they're taking away some of the things we've seen Fnatic be most comfortable on. The Dahaka for Wubby, the Genji for Shwimpy. Both of those players put all-star performances on those heroes, and seeing them identify that and take it away, I think, is very smart drafting from this point on Expert's behalf.
And especially Dahaka is one of is actually Wubby's main played hero, is the hero that he plays by far the most. And he is incredibly successful in him, similar to what we see from Nurok, for example, on the side of Team Liquid, which also played a huge role in yesterday's series. But Fnatic opens up with a new Burak and Greymane. And Greymane, next to Falstad, that you pointed out, is just one of the best heroes that we have on the side of Quacknix. He loves to play the hero. It was actually the hero that was known for the longest time.
Yeah, absolutely. And we saw Fnatic yesterday first pick Grey Main on Infernal Shrines. So they obviously have a very high priority in understanding what that hero is capable of when it comes to Infernal Shrines. I definitely think it's a phenomenal map for that hero.
Now, one thing I want to point out real quickly is Fnatic is extremely flexible in a lot of their drafts because they have hero pools that overlap. So if the situation arises that they need another hero that Quacknix mains, they can always put Shrimpy on Grey Main. So this is one of the cool things that we have on the top teams, that they have a slight overlap in their hero pool. So when they start a draft, they're still extremely flexible, and you cannot simply deduct, okay, one player already has his hero, therefore we only have to worry about another one and can maybe target ban him.
Ooh, that's a very high priority on Karazim. Not expected there, Skimmy.
I mean, before we even jump to the Karazim, the Abathur's being locked in, and I mean, with that in mind, surely the Falsa grows in that popularity, as you were mentioning just before as well. But the biggest thing that stands out to me across days 1 and 2, and even leading into this event, is the support choke meta we've seen. Ufa, Oriel, Tassadar highly prioritized either in the first rotation for picks or in the bans. It's got through to the second rotation, so teams not feeling like they need to be choked into a predictable pattern.
Is Sonya something that Fnatic has to consider here? I mean, it's not exactly the most common pick nowadays, but Team Expert does like it, and it's a great map for her.
Ethereal absolutely loves Sonya and has a huge impact on her. It's also something where Expert in the past, the draft right now doesn't cater towards it, but Expert has shown Leap as well if they want to go for a blow-up comp. I wouldn't, if they choose to go for Sonya, I wouldn't expect it here because of that draft, but it's interesting to see that the team is this flexible. So Sonya is definitely something they could use, and Abathur with Sonya later on makes her even much harder to kill than she already is.
Aww.
Fnatic opting in, they were hovering Sonya throughout the entire banning period, but they opted in to ban the Diablo instead. I think that makes a lot of sense. Devil's Due, very strong on Infernal Shrines, and Bad Benny's shown a lot of prowess on that hero. However, leaving Sonya up in particular interests me because in Game 1 on Infernal Shrines, the Wubby versus Athero matchup is what I'm going to be keeping my eye on the most.
Yeah, that would be sick.
Yeah, it's actually awesome because when I look at those two players objectively, I think they're the best solo lane players in their region, period.
Absolutely.
Well, I also think as with Diablo banned out now, it allows Fnatic to engage onto the shrine a bit easier with the Nubarak, because if you just burrow charge in and Diablo all of a sudden slams you into a wall, thanks to the hero being nerfed recently, Nubarak that is, and now being a bit more squishy, that's a huge amount of pressure and it's really dangerous, especially of course if you're supported by the Abathur in that sense. So that allows them to go a little bit deeper against that setup.
Wow, I was just going to say for Expert, I was just wondering what sort of direction they wanted to go with it, if they wanted to ban out the Arthas to try and prevent the counter-engage. I suppose it really would deny a lot, especially for the likes of Karazim. But they decided to go for the Zul, the specialist topic we discussed beforehand. It's coming into its own.
Yeah, something interesting. I don't necessarily know if this is Expert's thought process, but the Zul ban in particular, as well as the early prioritization on Abathur, I think Expert recognizes how strong Wubby is in that side lane role and wants to eliminate that sort of 1v1 aspect to it.
Right.
So they're targeting him in the banning phase, but at the same time, if you think about it, with an Abathur hat at the ready, Wubby's always at a disadvantage in the solo lane, as well as with the rotation speed of Genji. So I almost wonder if Expert is going into this series saying, hey, let's put not only Fnatic out of their comfort zone, but let's specifically target Wubby and see how he responds when he's under pressure.
I mean, just to add to that point even further, we've seen Zul as a reliable counter recently to the Illidan as well, which is a hero we know both teams like to play. Is that a potential factor here?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
The Illidan, given that the Zul's been taken away at the root, really countering him down, what they have already, especially with the Abathur.
I mean, in general, the Illidan for Team Expert, I could see that. I just want to come back real quickly to the point that Glaurung was making. Wubby has the highest hero pool on the side of Fnatic, so putting him out of the comfort zone is more or less impossible.
Yeah.
I agree 100% though that you should try and take some of his best heroes away, and with the target ban against Dehaka earlier, they did exactly that. But yeah, Wubby now is going to play on Leoric and has that side soak. But as you were just saying, on the side of Team Expert, Illidan can definitely be a threat. The issue is if you pick Illidan now, plus the additional tank, then you have a very melee-heavy setup, and I'm not quite sure if they are comfortable playing it, so they would lack a real range damage dealer, since Genji is also someone who wants to initiate. So that would be, especially into Leoric, a very difficult setup, since if he goes for the Paralyzing Rage on level 7, the CC and the control that you get out of it are pretty strong.
I mean, it's the kind of composition that you really need to win hard and win early, and we saw what Tempo still did.
They do it, though.
I mean, they go for it anyway, regardless. It is the diving combination, but I mean, it puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage if you aren't winning that early game by a stretch. As soon as the siege potential comes out from Fnatic, you kind of just have to let it happen.
Fnatic at this point in the draft, they've played against this style of composition that Expert's showing numerous times. It's just that it's hard to respond to consistently when it comes to Abathur, Genji, Illidan. It's such a strong trio, but one thing that I'm going to be keeping my eye on, and it's always a treat for me, is watching SMX play Uther. Yep. Uther, in particular, has very good matchups into Illidan as well as Genji. So I think a lot of this game is going to come down to SMX's positioning as well as what he can do with his healing cooldowns.
Isn't it kind of like throwing so many threats at the Uther, though? Like with the Genji, with the Illidan, that it's almost like an overwhelming feeling. He only has like so many stuns, etc.
I mean, if anyone can really pull that off, it's Maxi. And right now, Expert has to win team fights hard if they want to do something here. Yep. They also have a bit of a problem in the early game, since Illidan usually comes online a bit later in the match, and the earlier shrines, Fnatic can really make a good stand, especially since Abathur is, of course, missing. And Fnatic is a team that is extremely good at exploiting that. Now, there is always danger in the early game with Illidan, Abathur, and Genji against you, but normally you try to use that against teams that leave heroes alone on lanes, or when you can go into a favorable matchup, and Fnatic is not a team to allow that.
With Lunara coming out last, actually, we saw the stats there, 41% win ratio, but I think that's a little bit unfair for Fnatic, considering when they pick up the Lunara, they execute it very well, and they almost always win with it.
I mean, Lunara going into what Expert have there is really good matchup. Going to be able to do a lot of work, not only in terms of slowing them down, but applying the poison damage and having them sort of second-guessing their positioning. Can I stay into this? Do I actually commit to it? And not only that, the Greyman, especially with the dodge changes on the Genji, I mean, they can turn this around.
This also brings us back to what I said at the beginning of the draft. Lunara now being picked up is typically a hero that is played by Quacknix. So even though he's usually the Greymane player for them, or the Greymane player if they need something else for Shrimpy. They just started the draft and then decided that towards the end they needed something else. So they just, this is the power of having a little bit of hero overlap, that you can simply say, okay boys, we need a Lunara here, we need something else, Shrimpy, you take over Greymane, and that's exactly what they're going to do here.
Well, very short predictions before we head over to the commentary team.
I think Fnatic is currently too strong, I believe in them, but I like that Expert is this aggressive. I just think that in the end Fnatic's going to take it.
Yeah, I mean, to follow the exact same point, we saw exactly what happened with Tempo Storm. If they can't get the early advantage, they really do suffer, and games can end quickly, and Fnatic, the best team in the world, to punish them for that. So Expert need to get this series off with a huge, huge bang.
For me, Fnatic's team composition requires an insane amount of trust and execution to win. And Expert's comp, I think they're pretty comfortable with. It has a lot of opportunities to punish. I definitely do think Fnatic has what it takes to win, but I'm just going to be a wild card here. I'm going to say I like Expert's comp. I just want to see if they can take a game off of the Titans.
All right, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Let's find out as we head over to the commentary team now. It's going to be Trixler and Dread bringing us the first series of the day here between Fnatic and Team Expert.
Dreadnought, I am so excited for this match here. We have Team Boyband versus Team Horse Camp, and it all comes down here to the winner finals. Who do you think's going to get the win?
I'm going with Horse Camp.
You got to go with the Horse Camp.
You know, maybe it's a I got a horse thing. I don't know. Yeah, ultimately the NSEEK style maybe just kind of doesn't work with me. Are they more Backstreet Boys? Because I was a fan of them.
Yeah, maybe I would go with that. I would probably go with the Backstreet Boys, a little bit more on the rebel side, if you will, here for Fnatic. And I'm glad that you know that, actually. On the left side here, in the blue, it is going to be Fnatic. Quacknix playing Lunara, Wubby on Leoric, Breeze on a Nubrex, Mexi playing Uther, and Shrimpy on the Greymane.
And the underdogs looking to prove themselves. It is Expert in red. Johanna, played by Bad Benny. Kursan's going to be on Karazim. ADRD on that Abathur. Nick's going to be playing Genji, and Illidan, played by Athero.
Gotta love the composition here from Team Expert, looking to take the fight towards Fnatic, but I am a bit worried here. Fnatic's wave clear, look at it. Leoric, Greymane here, Lunara eventually after level 7 can be such a thorn for such an aggressive comp that Team Expert has drafted.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult for them throughout the entire game. The Abathur and the Illidan, I expect to try and make up for the pressure that we assume the Leoric will be putting out onto the map, but it very much is a case where they need to tread lightly at all moments throughout this game if they're going to be successful.
Already here, we're seeing some slight adjustments at level 1. We got the Region Master for Anubrek here, so we're going to see them rotating pretty often with that Anubrek, which is something that does usually occur when you have wave clear, so to be able to finish that out. But here we go, Team Expert putting pressure on Wubby.
Conveniently, though, still got the Wraith Walk here. Quacknick's just going to be looking for a bit of poke, but as long as Expert doesn't feel a lot of pressure to that front line for those first couple of levels, they've got to be very thankful. We always know that Abathur begins to struggle structurally very early on into the game until he gets this heroic.
That he does, but he does empower that Illidan, allows him to be a little bit more effective, so Expert hoping to use that to their advantage. Still keeping up with this pressure here on the top as they look for Wubby. Can they get the kill? Here comes Nick, and there it is.
Nick coming in for that follow-up. Great aggression here coming out from Expert. I was just going to say, I don't know if enabling the Illidan is going to be something that Expert can abuse until they get that Adrenal Overload at 4, but they are already showing this aggression against Fnatic.
I mean, they're doing it by just going for number advantages, topping that top side there. Fnatic on the other side, while not pushing in the bottom, which is typically a response, pushes in the middle and the bottom. But here we go, more on Quacknick's already, as he's going to jump behind the towers and back up. Same time though, Schwimpy is in trouble, and Team Expert with 2 kills already.
Fnatic has to show a bit more respect here. That is the second rotation where Expert had a lot of time. They were off the map for some while. Fnatic typically is a team that is able to sniff out those rotations when they're disappear for that long. But right now, Expert is very much pulling ahead on, look, once again, another winning rotation for them.
And typically for Fnatic as well in this battleground is they're usually willing to give up the first shrine and push in for turret advantage. They didn't do it on that bottom lane there. They could have left 1 person in the middle, also put 3 in the bottom while they had that gank that happened on the top and got those turrets. But right now, they're at an experience disadvantage. 4.5 to almost 4 for Fnatic, and still the pressure from Illidan in the top lane.
This is an amazing start here for Team Expert. Again, they have struggled in the past time and time again against Fnatic, and them coming off of the mid-season brawl, the current world champion, they've appeared unstoppable. And the fact that this game has started out this clean here for Expert makes me very optimistic for the rest of this series.
That's a good point. Team Expert has had a hard time against Fnatic. The last time they met up this season in Phase 2, it was actually a 3-0 victory in favor of Fnatic. And it was very similar to what we're seeing now. Team Expert has some great starts all the way up to level 10, and then somehow, some way, Fnatic has this it factor where they just decide, you know what, it's time to go ahead and ramp it up. And that usually happens after level 10, so we'll see if Team Expert can prepare for that.
It's really funny you say that Fnatic kind of has that factor at the post-10 mark, because I often feel, to me, it kind of feels like Fnatic gets bored of their opponent.
Yeah,
they're kind of like, we're done playing this game. We'd like to win now, so thank you for competing on the other side for the first couple of minutes. It was fun, but now it is our time to just win.
We just wanted to see what you were capable of, and it seems like, yeah, you're pretty decent, but you know what? We're world champions. Let's go ahead and win now. So for now, Team Expert is in the lead still, on the way towards level 7, but Fnatic does grab the Punisher here in the bottom. It will be pushing in the bottom, but Team Expert in the top left, they have utilized Illidan to keep pushing in and break down that fort.
Yeah, they've done a very good job of maybe giving Fnatic a bit of a taste of their own medicine with that structural advantage, knowing these Punishers very early on typically don't gain much more than that front wall. And so this is, again, it's still a brilliant start for Expert, but they cannot let up that pressure at any point. They need to make sure that they can snowball that through, because we're closing in on the level 7 here for Leoric, moving into that Royal Focus, having the Lingering Apparition, and becoming a colossal problem.
Yeah, which should be an issue on the next shrine, depending on where it does spawn for the Punisher. If it's in the middle, it will be a little bit more difficult for Fnatic. But if it's in the top, you have that Leoric go to the middle and the bottom lane, rotate between the two, and then, of course, have the rest of the members for Fnatic head up and contest that shrine.
Really nice posturing here. Schwimpy going to the wrong part of the map here. This is going to be an opening up and not a reset available, but still dominant showing. Person looking to get the dash out. Abathur Hat is on top of him, and actually Breeze shows that he does not want to get the aggression and get the impale, so this is another kill for free here for Expert with aggressive positioning.
I was thinking that too. It looked like Breeze may have wanted to turn that round in typical Fnatic fashion, but the problem was a Thorough came up from the top lane, came down to the middle, and became a threat and stopped that idea from being possible, while ADRD just used Abathur in the top to continue soaking the push from Fnatic as Leoric pushed in. Look at this. This is a full level lead. They're about to hit level 9, while Fnatic is about to hit level 8, which means 10 will be here insanely quicker than what Fnatic can even get to.
Yeah, they don't necessarily have the greatest composition at sieging up. You know, they do have a lot of melees that, I mean, Illidan is great at diving, but he also finds themselves commonly in risky positioning. So Expert with this advantage, they will find themselves most likely be able to get that secondary Punisher, but it by no means says that they are going to open up the map to a point where Fnatic constantly goes, how do we come back from this? I am still feeling confident that Fnatic will have that moment post-10 to be able to redeem themselves, but if it's a full talent here behind, that might be too much. Yeah,
I mean, that's why I like how Team Expert's been playing. They've had that 3-man with, of course, Genji with the Karazim being aggressive wherever they can on the map, so they had that opening for Illidan to siege on that top lane, have that one-on-one. When Illidan's in a 1v1, which is something you typically don't get in a lot of matchups, you can be effective, especially with the Abathur Hat. That's why we saw the fort being taken out. Here's that 10, about to hit for Team Expert while they're all up in the bottom lane.
So this is a really interesting situation to be in for Expert because they don't necessarily have the Shrine heroes we typically know to absolutely dominate on their own.
Yeah.
You normally, at a level 10 spike, you keep the 4 members to soak and send that 1 person to get the Shrine. But if they commit all the members to the Shrine to get it early, that gives Fnatic a free 10. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword here when it comes to the decision-making, but I do appreciate the response that they have taken. Just look for a couple of structures, look for a bit more experience, and then when the 10-on-10 happens, then they may show interest if Fnatic moves up there towards that Shrine.
Yeah, Team Expert is floating around the middle here. Breeze floating around too. The idea for Fnatic is if Team Expert is overextended, you get the instant cocoon snap pick, drop it on a member, jump in for a fight, and move on in. Team Expert being aware of this has pulled on back, and they've done Illidan in the top lane. With that immolation, while still not the best clear for a Shrine, he is effective enough, especially with Avatar hats coming in. And look at Team Expert. They have pulled back completely here now that Fnatic is at 10.
16 Skeletal Defenders are in the hands of Team Expert there. We saw Breeze for a moment questioning if he was going to pick a different heroic. He didn't lock in the immediate cocoon. I was questioning, you know, Locust Swarm has seen play historically onto a map like Infernal Shrines, but we're still going to see that oh so powerful cocoon. And now it's really going to be, what does Expert want to do? Man, Athero barely being able to make it out. Wubby is going to be coming in hot here, but there's no way he's going to make it. Nice friend or foe use. And Expert still just in control of this game. It's just, when does Fnatic come online?
Whenever they want to move for the fight would be the answer for me here, especially with the 4 and 7 already up. Greymane does very, very well with the cocktail build coming online. He's already working on those stacks right now on his level 7. He has 7 of those stacks available to them. But Fnatic, what I find curious is they actually haven't even moved into a spot to contest the Shrine at the very top. They're still floating around. They're looking for a fight. They're willing to move in on their opponents. And Team Expert has just tried to out-manipulate the map by sitting in the middle, by putting Illidan on the top lane. But when that aggression came in, they had to delay and even use Ultimate Evolution, which allows Fnatic to come back and experience. They're already closing that gap.
Yeah, they're doing a very good job of making up for that, and Illidan has displayed himself on top as capturing some of those Skeletal Defenders. So here we go. Secondary Punisher is going to go over to Expert as long as they don't get too close to Fnatic. You can see Fnatic just trying to second guess, is this the time to be able to initiate, be able to move up and catch themselves a member of Expert? But it doesn't look like this is the moment for them to get that.
A lot of control from Expert. First off, in the early game, they had aggressive control, a lot of chaos they put on the opponents. But here, after level 10, I like how they played a little bit more reserved. They're not putting themselves in a situation to make a mistake. If a mistake occurs and Leoric can actually start to open up the map, it's going to be very hard for Avatar to be effective.
Wow.
Leoric, though, does get picked up in the bottom, as I was just talking about him.
That was such a great rotation coming out from Expert, too, knowing that the secondary Punisher typically is not that effective at sieging, especially into a keep, right? It has more health, it has better damage into the keep itself, so transitioning to the opposite side of the map, not only do they find themselves a free Wubby pickoff, but now more structures while somebody has to respond to that on top. Everything about the transitions that Expert is making seems to just be seconds, if not, it feels like maybe minutes ahead of Fnatic for now.
And we've been talking about Leoric and his strength on the double soak, but Illidan, with him getting in that top, was able to soak a lane, rotate by himself to the middle, and this is why Leoric's kind of fallen off a little bit. Illidan brings that threat of coming in for a kill from across the map because of the hunt. Yeah,
it's kind of a... Illidan's been a match to what a lot of people felt, those side-soaking monsters, right? With the Haka and the Leoric, both of them really do struggle into the 1v1 matchup with him, and then conveniently he can wave clear at the same level thanks to the immolation opportunities and has the hunt to be able to match the Haka. Everything about him coming into the meta makes so much sense when understanding what we looked at for that janitor role, as Glarong likes to put it, that off-lane soaker.
Just too good at the duel, man. The brawling potential for Illidan is a little bit too much compared to those warriors that are just there for the clearing out of the minions. So, Team Expert is level 13 to 12, taking the opportunity to go ahead and grab mercenary camps while Fnatic has to play a bit defensive. Hunt goes up underneath the tower here as they go in for Schwimpy, but Schwimpy able to pull away, especially with the help of Smexy.
Yeah, just, you know, sending a message here, Athero, when you drop the hunt like that. Just letting Fnatic know you can check yourself before we're the ones who wreck you. It looks like they're going to make that happen once again with Wubby there in the mid lane getting caught out, unable to get that Wraith walk away. And this is now the, what, third death that we've seen on Wubby thanks to those brilliant rotations of Expert.
Yeah, so actually it seemed like that was two-layer attempt for Team Expert. They put a lot of pressure on the bottom, which made Uther come down to the bottom and make sure that he was around Greymane in case there was a threat of an attack coming in. But Team Expert turned that around instantly, heads to the middle lane where Leoric actually wasn't too overextended. He was actually near his fort, but he just got focused down so quickly because Team Expert did the 1-2 punch from the bottom lane all the way to the middle to get that kill.
So we're going to find ourselves in that awkward situation where Fnatic most likely will be unable to obtain the 16 talents here during this shrine. Expert with that Abathur should get the free soak onto the side, so it's a 16 advantage into their favor. And so what do they do to try and stop it? Are they going to get this all in? Because it is the best fight that they can possibly get. Cocoon lands onto a Thero.
Person turns it around, punches down the Cocoon. Can they lock down a Thorough? Here comes out the Impale, and Tomb hitting as well. A Thorough gets over the wall. ADRD using the Ultimate Evolution on Karazim to bring out the heals, but also to keep Illidan alive.
Still, the Shaman camp is pressuring up on top, so Quacknix looks like he's going to go back to deal with that. Meanwhile, Bad Benny is opening up here with the Burning Rage that he has picked up in that 13 talent tier. Suddenly, Johanna actually becomes a decent clear onto those skeletal defenders on her own. And that Shaman camp that was spawning up on the top in that time that they have bought really is kind of secured that Experts should be able to manipulate the map in a manner to where they get this 16, they get this skeleton, they get this Punisher, but you can see Fnatic wading into the wakes here. Athero sniffs a bit out. Oh my. ADRD on that slug. He's got to be shaking in his boots right now.
I mean, that's the thing. He actually might be okay in his boots right now. There's no shaking happening whatsoever. I'm behind a tower. I should be good to go, and Fnatic is hoping to prey on that. But without anyone being on the map, Team Experts naturally goes and plays a bit more safer. Avatar heads to the top right, a Thorough stays behind the towers there. Solid play, and I want to commend Expert right now. They are making something happen that we don't see very often in Europe right now. Fnatic is responding to them, and it seems to be just enough here where we actually have Team Expert in a spot where I see them moving forward and maybe getting a win in this game.
Yeah, I completely agree. Almost every game it seems like Fnatic plays, they are always the ones saying, you respond to us.
Yeah.
It's almost to a point where it feels a bit disrespectful, which it obviously isn't because they're winning every single game. But right now, Expert is really been able to turn that on them. This Punisher on bottom, though, every time has been neglected for Expert, but it makes a lot of sense. They've been winning the general laning phase across the board, and the Punisher isn't that effective at getting those kills until the map can open up enough. So once again, I just can commend these rotations from Expert, and in my opinion, is really the reason they find themselves with that 16 advantage.
I mean, yeah, look at the siege potential for Team Expert. They have Genji Shurikens. Sure, you can drop a few of those down, and then you have shield glares. Wow, that's going to kill a Ford too.
Yeah, unless you're going to follow up on the actual leap itself immediately, really the composition of Expert doesn't necessarily thrive. In the moments that the is truly effective and worth your cost of initiating and taking that high-risk call is only to gain a keep or even the core.
Well, for now, Fnatic has handled everything pretty well considering they still have all their keeps up and they're about to hit level 16. We're going to need some form of aggression from Fnatic, but it's a question of whether or not they can find that moment. Look at the map right now. It's painted red. Avatar is controlling everything that they can. All mercenaries are being grabbed by Team Expert, so they have the map constantly pushing in. So Fnatic can't find a spot through the fog of war to actually find an opportunity to pick somebody off. Bad Benny is the only one that's ever overextended, and all he has to do is drop an Iron Skin to get away.
The one thing I'm looking at is where's the next shrine going to be going? Because it does have a huge impact for Expert and not so much there for Fnatic. Just with that top keep falling so very low, if it goes to the top half of the map, the Punisher is going to be there. And if it is not going to, they conveniently have 30 seconds for their Shaman camp to spawn. The Abathur will be there with the Illidan and be able to enable that in, get the pressure onto the keep. And it might be a lose-lose scenario that Expert can find themselves to push Fnatic into on that shrine.
It's going to be middle or top. And even middle, I don't think it would be too bad if they're able to grab the mercenary camp to have them push in with Avatar that you're mentioning. Still, the same point that you bring up, still effective there. So Team Expert, I think, has good opportunities in both ways based on where it does spawn. Fnatic sharking around, looking for opportunities to clear out this wave in the top. And it's actually kind of interesting, this Royal Focus build with Lingering Aberration. Typically, you want to be pretty active on the map.
Oh, yeah.
But Leoric, after the 3 kills that he's had, hasn't had a chance to actually be that active. Every time he oversteps and walks into an Avatar mine, Illidan's ready to hunt in.
Yeah, and, you know, they've also done a really good job of trying to pressure whenever we see him, the Wraithwalk coming out, because even though I don't feel like it's talked about too much, that does affect the Royal Focus ability. You know, you don't get the Wraithwalk up if you take any form of damage whatsoever, so it's very nice to see that kind of hunt coming out from Athero where it seems to get that pressure onto this. Suddenly, the escape of Leoric is not nearly as successful as it traditionally would. The Shaman camp and this Punisher spawning on top, it's nice if they get it, but again, now it's very easy for Fnatic to pay attention to this top lane, and we're yet to find a full 5 versus 5.
Look at Team Expert.
They
don't mind this Punisher on the top. They're going to go ahead and hit in the bottom left. They're waiting for rotation. They'll probably put Illidan by himself down there just to keep pushing in with Avatar hats. Now they go ahead and show Johanna as well. So all 4 members down here in the bottom left for Team Expert, they want to keep wall. If they want, they can give away this Punisher. It could be something they can defend, as they have the potential to break down a fort if they're left uncontested.
The Shaman Camp still on top. This is just beautiful pressure across the board coming out from Expert. Time is on their side. The biggest thing is just not getting caught out into the rotation, but they know Leoric's up on top dealing with those skeletal defenders. As long as they know that number is ticking up there, the blue in the bottom left, somebody is up there. Now, he has decided to get the back, and conveniently Expert decides to disengage properly. It's almost, they're just always ahead of Fnatic right now. This is, I've never seen a team be able to do this to Fnatic in a long while, it feels like, and so controlled and calculated.
Yeah.
Fnatic is just like, where do we go? How do we come back from this? How do we deal with this pressure? Because you know the 20 that is lingering overhead here for Expert is got to be weighing on them.
Yeah, usually by now the game is stabilized due to a team fight, better soak from Fnatic, and they haven't had the opportunity. And Team Expert is about to get level 20, over 19.5 in experience already. Team Expert tries to get the attention of Fnatic to the top as they put Johanna up there with Karazim, start breaking down a couple of those minions, but this is all a ploy. Look in the bottom left. Illidan, Genji, already on top of the keep with an Abathur hat, and that keep is going down.
That keep is going to be going down. Only Uther and Lunar are the ones to be able to respond, but it is a bit too late. The real question is here, are they able to slow them down enough to maybe force a pick into that bottom lane? With the hunt right on out, Genji already mounted up. The answer is very clearly a absolute no. 20 advantage here. And now Expert has absolute dominance on the map.
Team Expert is playing a composition that allows them to dive in and force fights, but they're playing macro better than Fnatic has. Think about that.
The question is, can you team fight better than? Because if so, this may be a 3-0 in the opposite direction, what a lot of people would be assuming. If they can keep up this, if they keep this macro play at this level throughout the remainder of the series, and they can go compete very well into the team fight dynamic, because Fnatic they are great with rotations. They are very phenomenal, but the one thing that they have backing themselves up compared to the rest of Europe is they can team fight on top of it. It's a nice little cherry on their sundae here on why they have claimed themselves a world champion.
Team Expert has a couple of options here to try and force a fight before 20 does hit for Fnatic. You can run to the top shrine, maybe start clearing it out there, or force Leoric to finish off that Punisher, or you can bait your Illidan in the bottom. They've tried to do both of them. They put Johanna on the top, and they put Illidan down the bottom left with Nick available to jump in on. If anyone does overextend, it becomes a one-on-one. But Fnatic is playing it safe and patiently, and they've left Leoric on the top on the Fog of War to steal away one of those minions if need be. So far, Fnatic's actually doing a good job of getting back into this game, despite already losing a keep.
So where do we see Fnatic go from here? Because Expert has had the 20 advantage, but they're yet to do anything with it. Maybe Breeze might be the focus. Oh my
Breeze.
trick.
Cocoon comes out. Nick and a Thorough will clear that up, and Breeze just backs away.
Leoric just displayed himself, though, up onto the top half, denying the Punisher there from Johanna. I'm surprised Expert, once they knew the Leoric was up on top and got that final cap, they still had the 20 advantage, and Cocoon was down. That was an opportunity that maybe it would have been optimal for them to initiate, but obviously they got different plans. Look at this. They are the sneaky snakes. Covert Ops Expert here all game on Infernal Shrines.
Super sneaky here. Johanna's still the only one on top. Fnatic knows something's up, though. They haven't seen Illidan since the clear on that Cocoon. They're all on the bottom, ready to retreat back into Finn if need be. This may go ahead and force a B from Team Expert, and yes, they will go ahead and back up. But the great beauty about this threat that Team Expert just exploited, even though nothing happened, they made sure that Fnatic did not push with the Punisher they just earned. And the Punisher on the top, been cleared up by Johanna. It's almost finished up and putting some damage on that fort, but it has been done here. They still have all 3 forts, all 3 keeps, and of course their core.
Yeah, no, that was a really good situation for Expert once they realized that they didn't find an opportunity to abuse that 20, but I still would have liked to see a little bit more aggression for Expert because that was why they found themselves with a lead in this game. We talked about it like kind of balancing out. Well, because of the passiveness we saw out of Expert with that time advantage that they had, now we are back to that even game, minus the keep and the pressure through bottom. Obviously, that is still something that they can claim to be an advantage for themselves, but I am a bit concerned after seeing that lack of confidence after dominating for so many minutes.
I am kind of curious, though. Team Expert still has yet to pick their Karazim level 20 and their Johanna level 20. Is there any differences that you would want to go for at that 20?
Give me a moment on that one.
I'm
gonna
maybe the extra Blessed Shield instead of the Indestructible. Just going in for an all-in idea of just locking somebody down. You only have 1 cleanse available.
Okay.
Get the extra proc and then try to force down a target.
Well, we got Palm.
So
we know that the fact that focus on to making sure that as long as the Palm doesn't proc, we have 5 seconds for it to be back online. But yeah, the double lockdown is something that is obviously going to be really effective too. And with double Blessed Shield maybe is a bit better than a lot of people would understand from the support perspective, because if for some reason we do see Fnatic fail to be able to get the cleanse, even if he cleanses the original Blessed target, because that was picked up for Uther, he is almost always going to get hit. And then if you see the secondary rotation, it's going to lock down against 3 more. It's just, Blessed Shield functions different from a supporting role than every other. Your cleanse has to be not only very time sensitive, but you have to be aware of your positioning afterwards.
Yeah, your positioning is also sound-based, right? Like if you get it after the sound's already procced, it's too late.
Honestly, I personally feel like, yeah, when the hit on the animation of the character, yeah, when it comes to projecting Johanna, it's like she does this little lean to grab something like from her lower shoulder, and that's when you can very much know this target is going to be the one Blessed Shield. It's also very apparent if you know Clump is a 3-man. A lot of JoJos don't have that kind of restraint, but we're at the Western Clash. We got some of the best teams in the West here, and we're not going to be able to see that.
Okay.
Here we are.
Next shrine is activating here in the bottom. It's become very intense for the last few minutes between our teams. No kills for a hefty amount of time. Team Expert has positioned themselves in a spot, again, where Illidan is in the top lane. And Fnatic has to respect this, but also be in a spot where they can also defend the Punisher on the bottom. Remember, this Punisher, if it gets activated by Expert, will be pushing in a lane that has catapults and no keep for defense.
Fnatic has all the members there up towards top, but Athero still has shown that he's just uncatchable.
Going in.
He goes in here. Wraith Walk was going to be enough to pull away. This is not a big enough skeletal defender advantage for this not to be a fight, and it's going to be the Entomb. Friend or foe finds a way for Athero to be able to get out, but this is going to be the first contested shrine 20 minutes into Infernal Shrines here between these teams.
Expert has the lead in the kind, but Fnatic stepping forward with Lunara starts to bring out the damage here, bringing that Splintered Spear, working the damage in as much as possible. 13, even picking up Giant Killer to put pressure on that Johanna. Johanna still,
look at the flank.
Now at the level 20. Athero is on the left, you are correct. Well, he comes back with the Wraith Walk, watching that flank that could happen, so Breeze can be in the front here. At the same time, Nick sneaking on by.
He's waiting into the wayside. They're going to sacrifice this. Illidan, though, maybe getting caught out. The Hunt's going to be dropped, and they're going for core?
Are they going to do it? Where's the ultimate evolution? Are they going to jump on top of the Illidan? So they have 2 Illidans there. It's going to be the Genji. They go straight for the core. They're working on it, breaking it down. Smexy
Shield's
already
gone.
back with the benediction. Here comes the stun.
Oh, Quacknix is going to be able to move up there. Nice knock up onto Nick. The deflect is interrupted. 91% onto the core, but the palm hits.
It's going to be hitting here. Athero still alive, still dancing here. No heals though available, and Illidan is down. Nick also going down as well. The core is down to 30%, but still, Fnatic is able to defend, but they got the Punisher. Fnatic did. They're pushing in the bottom right corner. Can they make something happen in the next minute, though, to where they can take out the game?
It's only Johanna and an Abathur to be able to defend that. There's no way they have enough damage to threaten the back door onto the core. So the question is, do they have the ability to stall out long enough? It's definitely a keep dead here for Team Expert. The question is, who's alive beyond that point? I'm pretty confident Fnatic's got this.
Fnatic moving forward here. That Punisher is at about half health. If they do push through here,
Sidewall.
And they don't get a keep.
Initiate.
They didn't get it. Johanna takes the damage here, goes for the Condemn, doing the delay. 20 more seconds until Karazim and Illidan are up.
20 seconds away, but the keep is already going to be going down. The Punisher at 10% HP, but Fnatic doesn't care. They're going to initiate all in.
Here we go. Johanna coming with the Condemn, because Condemn going to be hit by the Cocoon.
The Mule goes
also
down.
Being used for Abathur. They're trying their best to hold here. 3 more seconds for Illidan, but the core, it's already at 64%.
They've got it. It looks like that is it with the members of Fnatic up. It does not matter. There's too much healing coming out from the Uther, and Fnatic with the slowest game I have seen in a long while calculates it out, fights the one shrine that they need, and win game 1 over Expert.
One of the things that a lot of teams, a lot of members forget about in this game is sometimes it's not about the kills. You gotta kill the structures. You gotta take out the core. It's when the game is over. Fnatic knowing this, after going down 5-0 in kills, patiently waits out their opponents, waits for a mistake to happen. Expert getting antsy with their composition, and you can understand why. They have Illidan, they have Genji. The team fight maybe not the best compared to what Fnatic has. Waits for them to go for a core rush, defends it, and counter pushes for the win.
I brought up the 20 advantage that we saw from Expert and how you could appreciate their patience in looking for another pick, but then the fact that they were unable to make anything happen to the later stages, that they weren't even willing to take the full 5-on-5 for Fnatic there onto that bottom shrine, makes me feel like they have got to be, you know, kind of upset with themselves that they weren't more aggressive into that window, because I very much feel like if they had even just, you know, made Fnatic second guess themselves with that, it would have very much kept their momentum into the, you know, they would have remained into the driver's seat like they were for the first half of the game. It was just, they felt like that was the only way to move into the core like that, and they thought it was calculated enough, but in the end, Fnatic doing what they do best, winning.